Minister, I welcome the opportunity to speak on this important debate in terms of Budget 2023, and I'll certainly try to be as constructive as possible in recognising some few positives that have been announced and the supports that have been introduced, which were long sought. But I want to also highlight some of the areas that will have clearly emerged as lost opportunities. For example, much has been made of the fact that the budget provides for €600 electricity credit to be applied on all bills in 3 separate instalments. But the policy direction of Ireland's energy development remains essentially unchanged. And that's the root cause, I believe, of many of the issues that consumers face in terms of prices. Government remains committed to pursuing a precarious and unstable course of power or source of power in the form of renewables. It has signalled no clear switch to the funding of LNG or gas or oil exploration. All this means is that government, through its own inaction, has prolonged the energy crisis for households and businesses and made it even more certain that future electricity credits will have to be delivered, as well as supports for those businesses who can survive in such a hostile pricing climate. Without a fundamental shift in our energy policy, I wonder if at all the government has done is delay the inevitable collapse of the SME sector, who will at some point or other simply be unable to cope with the level of bills that will need paying, even in the context of the additional supports announced today. I do welcome the fact that the fuel allowance eligibility will be extended. Fuel poverty is real, and it is an issue that should shame us as a so-called first world developed nation. But again, why no shift in terms of our approach to peat or reclaiming the bogs as indigenous sources of fuel and of energy for our power plants that have been shuttered by a short-sighted and rigid approach, which I completely opposed at the very beginning and will continue to do so. Your government is also making a lot of noise about how this multi-billion euro cost of living, cost of living budget. But where did those costs come from? Many of them were there years before the war in Ukraine, years before the energy crisis that is unfolding. The cost of childcare in this state has been on the political agenda for a decade or so now. For at least the last 6 years, families and working parents have been telling successive governments that they cannot afford the excessive fees that are being asked of them. Early years childcare providers will also have been seeking additional core funding for years, and even when it was announced in the last few weeks, many providers identified major systematic issues with it and sought to have the entire core funding model re-evaluated. I welcome the announcement with respect to the children's allowance payment and the increases in social welfare payments. They fall far short of what I and my colleagues in the Rural Independent Group proposed. The increases today will not keep pace with the inflationary pressures and at the very most will simply allow families to tread water as the costs rise under them. As we know from Parliamentary Budget Office analysis, the Tax Strategy Group paper on social protection outlined potential options for welfare rate changes in Budget 2023. A €15 increase in core social welfare payments, such as job seekers allowance benefit, one-parent family benefit, illness benefit, that are currently set at €208, equates to a 7.2% increase. But given actual inflation rates at €15 increase would not cover the 2022 inflation, resulting in a fall in the real value of the core social welfare rates. A €15 increase in the contributory state pension, currently €253.50, equates to a 5.9% increase, falling considerably short of the likely overall 2022 inflation rate. Government has chosen to limit the increase to €12, meaning that the increase will be eaten up. Several months ago, I called for the retention of the children's allowance to all post-primary school pupils who have turned 18 or who may have turned 18 while in full-time education. That would have been a direct benefit and a direct help to these families who continue to struggle day in, day out. In terms of the carers, I do welcome the once-off payment announced, but the Family Carers Association have said that the means test issue remains a major source of concern for them. And also, there's no long-term vision, as the family carers have pointed out. There's no long-term vision for the carers that save this state €20 billion every year, and that is very concerning. What you've given them are just short-term measures, such as the once-off payment. I mean, that's a very short-term thing, but really and truly, I would have felt that they deserved a lot more support. We have, I think, about 500,000 carers in this state, and as I say, they're saving the state $20 billion a year. So it's disappointing to see that, that again their needs aren't fully met and that there's no long-term vision. Major expansion in GP visit card scheme, bringing in 430,000 extra patients a year. But how will the GPs cope? I mean, we have a chronic shortage of GPs. I know in Laois and Offaly, GPs cannot take on new patients. So where are the GPs coming from? I'd just like to know. All of these fanciful notions, I think, are misleading people. You know, in that case, certainly, you need to be honest with people. The increase in spending for oral health, but where are the dentists? I mean, there is a chronic shortage and there's an issue with medical card holders not getting access to dentists. So where are these dentists coming out of? I've raised these issues a number of times, but I think you're not being straight up with people, you're not being straight up with the public on these issues. You know, you're trying to create something that can't be done, basically, fanciful notions in some cases. I would like to see how you're going to increase numbers of GPs to meet what you've promised here. Thanks.